Missing home, missing the things that you call upon. Setting sun.
Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes to help your body move. There you go. There you go. Okay.
Even if things all fall through the cracks again. 'Cause I've been losing sleep.
Everything hurts so bad. Excruciating pain. The brain is physically in so much pain. The nerves from my back of my head, through my neck, through my back.
All right. Welcome to the Face of Malpractice. I am your host, Melissa. For those of you tuning in for the first time, this channel is dedicated to featuring interviews with fellow psych drug harmed warriors. It is not just my story to tell. This platform is meant to create space for others to share their truths. And today we'll be interviewing Crystal Hoshaw. Did I say your last name right, by the way?
Hoshaw.
Hoshaw, okay. That's, I was like, I should have asked you in the beginning, but that's all right. So Crystal is a mother, writer, and creative who had her first encounter with psychiatric medication at 15. As a yoga and meditation teacher and practitioner, she's especially interested in how nervous system regulation, community, and storytelling can support healing, with a constant eye towards nuance, bodily autonomy, and informed consent. Thank you, Crystal, for being with us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, definitely. So I think a really good place to get started is like, so you were first prescribed psychiatric medication at just 15 years old. Can you share with us like what was happening in your life at that time and how the decision to medicate you was framed to you originally?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying I think I'm somewhat maybe not unique, but a little bit different in the psych harm community because I was the impetus for medicating myself actually all three times, the separate occasions that I was medicated. But when I was like 14, 15, I went through, obviously just the age itself is a difficult time as you're developing your identity. But I was going through a period where I essentially started to question whether I was a good person. Some things happened in my life, both in my social group, relationship with my mom, relationship with boys. I was like really questioning who I was as a person. Oh, I thought I was good. Maybe I'm not, you know? And then I also encountered Elizabeth Wurtzel's book, Prozac Nation, at some point. And I think my experience really speaks to the power of the influence that things can have on young people, whether they're intended or not. The idea of social contagion. But in Elizabeth Wurtzel, I found a very glamorous, intelligent, successful figure who was in pain. And I thought, well, if I'm feeling pain, maybe I should follow in her footsteps. And that was my original kind of exposure to psychiatric medication. I don't honestly even remember really what the book said about it, whether she was super positive or negative about it. I just remember looking up to her,
Wow.
um, and thinking, well, if this is what she does when she's in pain, maybe I should do that too. And so I was acting out with my parents at that time, and they really wanted to like have their hands off. They were just
Mm.
blinders on, and so my pushing to like have some kind of legitimization of my pain eventually led me to, I suppose, persuade them to take me to my pediatrician to, look into Prozac. And I barely remember, honestly. I barely remember the whole experience. I remember a lot of feeling states around it, but I believe I was on a pediatric dose of Prozac for maybe 5 months max. Um, and I don't remember feeling any different. And I remember sitting at my computer in my bedroom at one point thinking like, why am I taking this? This isn't me. This isn't who I am. Just some kind of voice in me saying like, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, I don't want to
Mm.
be medicated. And so I just stopped taking it cold turkey. I don't remember any discussion with a doctor or with my parents. Like I said, they didn't like to touch these topics. Like the fact that I had to be was on a medication at all was super taboo to them. So so that was like kind of it for a while. And it's important to note at the same time in my life, I also left public high school and went to independent study. So I was really withdrawing from the world as part of like my acting out. And so it's hard to know what came from what because it was social isolation for a young person is very impactful on their mental health. So um that period of my life, I started to get really anxious, a lot of social anxiety. It only ever occurred to me like within the last year that it could have been stopping the medication cold turkey, but I'll never know. Like I'll never know was that chicken or egg or was it, nature nurture? Like I'll never know. And it very easily could have just been the fact that I was so isolated and kind of contracting into my pain.
Mm.
So fast forward to about 19, I was living in the Redwoods with my partner at the time, my boyfriend, my high school boyfriend or high school sweetheart. And I had a really major panic attack. He was out of town for work. I was by myself. And I had such an extreme experience of just feeling completely isolated, like there was nothing outside of my walls, like just blackness. And I was the only person in the universe, nothing else existed. And it was really scary because it was so vivid to me. And that experience caused me to pursue medication again.
Mm.
And so I went to see a doctor. I think it was an urgent care doctor because I couldn't get in to see my pediatrician when I was like in town, during a break from college for the winter break. They didn't have any openings. So I just went to the urgent care. I said like, hey, this is what's going on with me. I'm in college. I don't live in this town anymore. And to her credit, that doctor was hesitant to prescribe. But I told her, I'm going to see a therapist. I'm going to do it right. I'm very responsible. I'm a persuasive person. Like she was like, okay, she wrote me the prescription. Um, and that happened because I was so scared. I didn't want to have the experience that I had again. So even though I had kind of said, you know what, medication's not for me. And I was kind of like a hippie granola type person, and I didn't even take aspirin, that experience was scary enough that I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to do like the, you know, by the book thing. And that's what happened. And I remember reading the pamphlet, before I started taking the medicine and like talking myself out of being afraid of all the side effects,
Mm.
saying like these are it's like a 1%, maybe less chance, like it's just your anxious mind, like don't listen to the anxious mind, that's why you're taking this medication, and like really talking myself through it. And then I went on the Zoloft, that was Zoloft that time. I went up to 50 milligrams, which is, to my knowledge, the next higher dose above pediatric. Um, and I was still at my parents' house during my winter break, and I had a pretty intense response to just going on the medication. I couldn't eat for a few days. I was nauseated. I was throwing up. I was like just sleeping. Like it was such an intense onboarding experience physically. Um, and that wasn't, even before the mental health part or the perceptual part, whatever you want to call it, kicked in. So I was like having all this nausea and couldn't keep food down and lost a bunch of weight and was kind of like just resting, that was already an intense experience for me. It wasn't like psychologically scary or negative. It was just physical. And then I also, thought to myself, I can't just rely on this medication. I have to do all the things to do it right, I have to exercise. I have to push myself into social situations and overcome my anxiety. I have to, I made like this list of things for myself, um, because I had spent so many years going the opposite way and just contracting into it. And I thought, oh, like I can't live this way anymore. It's gonna kill me. Um, and so that's what I did. I like made dates with all my old friends. I was in my hometown, like, let's get together. I'm here, pushing myself into situations that I would have been highly anxious in before. And little by little, that anxiety started to melt away. Was it the drugs? What was it what I was doing? I have no idea. Um, then I went back to where I was living, which was Berkeley, California, and I increasingly was having a positive experience on the drugs. Um, but like maybe a little too positive in retrospect. Like I was 19, so I was like down to have a fun experience. But I was a little bit high, at least a little bit. I later have talked to a psychiatrist about it, and he described what he labeled what I described as a hypomanic state.
Mm,
So like I would wake up in the middle of the night completely just awake, totally energized. In
mm.
order to go back to sleep, I would have to get on my bike and go for like a hard, intense bike ride to get out the energy, and then I would be able to go back to sleep. Um, my creativity and like my mental, states were very, I don't know if euphoric's probably too strong of a word, um, but definitely something was going on, like there was a highness, a heightenedness to my experience, which I think is unusual maybe for people who take Zoloft. I don't think that's a common experience.
So are you implying that you think that the medication had caused this reaction, is what you are thinking?
It seems like it, yeah. But based on the first of all, the physical, really intense physical experience of going on the medication, the
Yeah.
way it totally like it really affected my GI system really strongly. And then all of a sudden having these like this energy, like just an insane amount of energy, it was unusual. I never had insomnia before. I never woke up in the middle of the night and wanted to, write a book before. Like that was new. And like I said, the psychiatrist called it hypomanic, um, which is sort of, to my understanding, is like a little bit of submania. Um, Not that I really know or subscribe to that necessarily, but um,
Quick question, was the doctor though insinuate, like he labeled it, but was he connecting it to the med at that point? Were you connecting it at that point? Like, was there
I
any
didn't,
connection
no, no, no. So this was years later
that you
when I
checked it
finally
with her?
admitted this, because I have like for years I was so freaked out by the experience.
Yeah.
I'll get to this point, but this was a doctor I talked to maybe 15 years later. He
Mm.
said, "Oh, that sounds like you were in a hypomanic state." So no one during that time was
Uh-huh.
aware of what
Okay.
was happening. I didn't have a psychiatrist. I had a student therapist through my college who, charged me $20 an hour or whatever. Um, that was like my concession to my what do you call it? The clinic, the lady who's prescribed, that was a little bit reticent to do so. Um, so I was having experiences like that. I was in graduate school. I was riding my bike everywhere, and I started to increasingly feel like I was on top of the world, and I
Mm.
was not afraid. Like it was like I was able to turn off the switch of being afraid. And I would do things that I would have been so afraid to do before, just little things like jumping my bike. And my body wouldn't react anymore. I'd go off a jump and I'd be like, oh, I can finally do it because I don't have that thing that my nervous system grabs me and shuts me down. And it felt like freedom, especially to a 19-year-old. And then the semester ended. I had done maybe a year of grad school at that point, and I decided to go on a 3-month trip to Europe by
Mm.
myself, and I decided to do it without medication.
Mm.
So I stopped the medication cold turkey, thinking like I'm good now. Like I don't need this. I'm not even sure it's really affecting me. I'm like so happy. I love grad school. I'm teaching yoga. I'm like riding my bike. I'm just loving life. I'm gonna go to Europe.
Yeah.
And very soon after quitting cold turkey, I started to feel very agitated
Mm.
and very impatient, and this feeling of just uncomfortable in my skin. And in my head, I was like, oh shit, maybe the medication was doing something, you know? Um, and my solution was just to pretend it wasn't happening,
Mhm.
like complete dissociation,
Yeah.
and just go on this trip and be completely alone for 3 months, not know anyone, not tell anyone, um, and just progressively get more and more dysregulated. Um,
Mhm.
all the negative feelings I had before came back like 10,000 folds. Just super socially anxious, paranoid. I don't know if I had akathisia. It was so long ago. I don't remember like shaking, physically shaking. I remember just mm, the feeling of just existing in my skin being like intolerable.
That sounds like akathisia,
Yeah,
right?
it does. It does. But I definitely don't remember shaking. I'm not sure. Maybe I did. Um, yeah, so that was that 3 months. I was, a 19-year-old girl, really, alone in a
Mm.
place I'd never been. I didn't even have a phone. Um, it was really, really hard. I can laugh about it now because what else can you do, But I'm lucky I didn't get assaulted or something. I was just in such a vulnerable state. I felt like a leaf blowing in the wind. Whoever wanted me, come with me. Yeah, let's go there. Let's go to, I just didn't know a soul. Sure, be my friend. Please love me. I'm completely lost inside.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard to convey the pain. And maybe I don't want to quite go there. I don't know. But it was really dark. And I think I did everything thinking I kind of had this basic understanding of exposure therapy. I wouldn't have called it that at the time, but thinking if I just pushed harder, eventually my body would say, "Oh, I'm fine." But I think I just pushed myself and just stressed my nervous system out so much. I ended up getting like a stomach infection and having to go to the hospital and just completely ignoring my body, completely pretending nothing was wrong. Like that was my solution to the problem, just to mind over matter it. And I came home. I probably had gained like 20 pounds, maybe not that much. I was really small, but I probably left on one, it was 110 and maybe came home like 130. So it's very possible I gained like 20 pounds just because anything, oh, food, maybe that'll give me relief. Oh, like alcohol, maybe that'll give me relief. Oh, this guy, maybe he'll give me relief. Sleep, maybe that'll give me relief. Go to Amsterdam, maybe like anything, anything. I'm lucky that I didn't go far with that. I mean, I did, especially for like a hippie girl who didn't really drink, didn't do a lot of stuff. It was my time of indulgence, but out of at least what I perceived as necessity at the time. So I came home. I was getting ready to start another year of grad school. I was like, I can't show my face like this. I think I'm not sane. Like I'm not okay. And if I show my face to anyone who has any inkling of, mental health, I might get locked up. And I dropped out. I just wrote a 2-line email to my advisor. I don't think it's the right time for me. Thanks. Done, gone. Um, and then I just floundered basically through the rest of my 20s, um, until I got pregnant. So I was in the middle of what I would call protracted withdrawal, and I got pregnant, and that in retrospect was a major gift because Um, Caring for myself as someone who had a child growing inside her was very different. Then it forced me to stop dissociating basically from what I was experiencing. And it forced me to say, how can I actually help myself instead of just pretending this isn't happening?
Mm.
Um, because I have to help this child, I have to care for this child. And so,
And you did not know you were protracted at this point.
no, I had none of this
No
vocabulary.
idea yet. Okay. And then you got pregnant. Wow.
Yeah, I just thought I thought like I was low key insane and that if I talked to anyone about it, I'd, be diagnosed with something or I was just trying to prove to myself by being in the world, like every day getting up and going and doing what I had a job at a bakery. I'd sometimes go to yoga class, whatever. Like, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. It was like a
Yeah.
mantra, but I was not okay. And I could finally at least admit that a little when another life was involved. Um, and so, it was still a long and arduous journey, but building a life for a child was actually what my nervous system needed. Like the same things that a child's nervous system needs, my nervous system needed. Regular sleep, regular meal times, consistency,
Mm.
naps, rest, like toddler level, bottom of the pyramid, the Maslow's hierarchy, bottom of the pyramid stuff. Like you need a roof over your head, you need safety, and you need care. And so,
And real quick question.
yeah.
So were you able to give yourself this level of grace while you were pregnant, or was it once the child came, you realizing the care that that child needed was the same care you needed? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a great question. It all came slowly and f in a fragmented way. It wasn't like some realization,
Yeah.
you know. At some point I crossed a threshold of like, wow, that was, I mean, I see it as grace. Like there it had to be designed. It was too perfect that in retrospect, that's what got me out of it. Because I was like at the point before I knew I was pregnant, I was at the point of really wanting to give up. Like I had an enormous willpower to do what I was doing.
Yeah, you do.
Mm. I'm a very life affirming person. My beliefs are extremely life affirming. And so I was gonna be a warrior. Like I was gonna fight the good fight, but I was getting to the point where it had been, I'd been back from Europe for like a year or more, and I didn't know who I was anymore. My brain didn't work. And I was a student. That was my identity.
Mm.
I was in grad school. I was 19. I was precocious. Like I was totally broken. I couldn't do anything that I had done before. Um, and I had no identity. And I finally was starting to get worn down. And I was thinking about, I wouldn't say giving up on life exactly,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to put it. Um, Definitely feeling like, all right, well, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe I'm just fooling myself. And then my pregnancy happened, and it gave me a deeper sense of purpose to put myself back together.
And can I just quickly ask, like, it's interesting. I see other women who ac accidentally get pregnant through protraction, and some women heal through it. Like they heal because of the hormonal changes and how it affects progesterone and all of this stuff. And I am curious of like, like just being pregnant itself, did you see any change in your symptoms?
That I'm glad you brought that up because I did an enormous change. So what's interesting is because I was having such extreme, what protracted withdrawal is like, just a roller coaster, and I had had such extreme reactions to Zoloft in the first place, right? I didn't know I was pregnant till I was 5 months pregnant.
Mm.
And, I'm like, oh, I'm throwing up. Well, because I had tried to
Normal
go
day
back
for
on
you.
Zoloft at that point, but I suppose I was too far down You know what I mean? Like I was too far gone. And if I had gone back like that week when I was about to go to Europe and I started feeling agitated, maybe it would have been fine. But it was like a year later. And so the Zoloft did nothing, but, or at least in my, estimation, but it also disguised my pregnancy symptoms because I thought, well, the first time I was throwing up every day, it's just the Zoloft, or who knows at this point. Maybe I'm just finally dying. Like maybe it just like this is the end,
Yeah.
because it was so awful.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, I was starting to have some really positive chemical or whatever you want to call it experiences, hormonal experiences from the pregnancy, but not recognizing it as such because of being on the Zoloft. So the relaxin, I remember viscerally because when you feel that bad, something like that, that I think it's a hormone. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but it's called relaxin. And you can imagine what it does. It's like, and that's something that happens during pregnancy. My hair got super curly and like luscious, and I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm not dying. It was it, and that's another reason I think of it as grace, because it was like life was giving me this infusion, like an IV of life, and I needed it. So it's really interesting that you say that other women have had that experience because it makes total sense to me. Um, and then, when I finally realized I was pregnant, um, it was just like a total scramble to get into some kind of situation that, could support a child. And I think also, it's deeper than that because it's never just one thing, right? It's never just like, oh, the meds harmed me and this is my story. It's like I had a lot of lessons to learn, a lot of lessons to learn. And I can't see from where I'm standing now how I could have learned the lessons if
Mm.
these things hadn't happened. Um, and if I hadn't had a child to pull me out of that, a child to help me actualize my deepest values, um, and also suffered that much, how could I have the empathy that I have, or also the openness to other people's experiences and not saying, well, this is my experience, so this must be true for you, I think that's really important, and it's something I wouldn't go back and say, I'll give you that back if you could erase that suffering. Um,
And only people that you know, people tend to have to be on the other side to be able to look back and say, oh, wow, like you were the greatest death and greatest gift of my life.
exactly. Yeah, like I would not want to relive it, but I couldn't be where I couldn't be standing here without it. And at the same time, it's not over because I went back on Zoloft about 10 years ago. It was in 2017, so not quite 10. I was living in Thailand prior to that time, and I lived there for 3.5 years. I moved back kind of not against my will, but like I had a separation from my son's father. He wanted to move back to the States, to California. I didn't really want to go. Long story short,
That's hard.
you know, I came back to the States. I got a job in a completely different field. I pushed myself really hard, really fast again. And I ultimately what I think happened is I stepped so out of integrity for myself that I had what might be called a breakdown, like a nervous breakdown, or I mean, it was a nervous breakdown. And I thought, oh, I'm a mom now. I I just got this job. I can't lose this job. I'm a single mom. Like this is my lifeline, so I have to do everything to potentially hold on to the tiny foothold of stability that I have. So even if that's going back on meds after it was 10 years at that point, a decade, I was so angry at myself. I was so mad. You fought this hard this long and you're just going to go back on them. But I had to do it in my mind for my son. And did they help? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because it's never clear. It's never that easy to see. Um, I was on them for several months And the first time I ever felt better, or felt like they're working or some kind of shift in my mental state, I went away with family. They had booked a hotel, like a house, an Airbnb or something. I don't even remember where, but just being in the house, it was my ex's family, his parents, so my son's grandparents, some cousins. It was just like so nourishing to be in this house full of people on this little weekend trip that we took as a family. And I remember driving back from the house to where we lived in the city and thinking or feeling, physically feeling like, oh, maybe the Zoloft's actually going to work. Like I feel different. Like it's hard to describe, but when when you're coming up on a psychedelic, just that little bit of glow feeling. And I was like, that has to be because of what just happened, because it's been months. I've been on the meds for months. Why would it start working now? It's because I got this lift from the experience I just had. Um, so was it even related to the Zoloft? I don't know. These are like the questions that I think so many of us ask and rack our brains about and can't answer. Um, But anyway, I'm still on it. I was on 100 milligrams for most of the last decade, and I am now on 62.5 milligrams. I just switched to liquid, and I'm I'm actually able to do a true hyperbolic taper now, which I only learned that word in the last maybe 8 months at the most. I heard Laura Delano speak on a podcast, um, and then I joined the Inner Compass Exchange, and um, I learned the word protracted withdrawal, and it kind of changed my entire life. Like, I didn't know that there were other people who went through what I went through. And that sounds absurd to me now, but there was still a wounded 19-year-old girl. Like, I might be insane, on some level. This happened to me. Maybe it's because I'm secretly insane?
It's so interesting because it's like these drugs break our body in so many ways, but I think it's in a really like in a strange way that phase of like not knowing what's happening to you and feeling broken and not like and it just internalizing that for so long I think is like equivalent to the damage that these drugs do. Like to not know and to keep identifying as internally as broken. And we are broken. Like what leads us to these drugs, right? Like there's obviously a journey that led us to these drugs. Those drugs ultimately are, yes, neurotoxins and are a catalyst ultimately, but
Yeah.
like that not knowing and that self-blame just I feel like that just destroys us, like destroys the body in so many ways. And so to go that many years not knowing, right? Like in your case, you went so many years not knowing and then finally getting answers if it was through that podcast or like however, like how was was it through a podcast that you learned what was happening to you? Is that how well?
Yeah. Well, so I tried to go off the Zoloft in like 2020. So I had been on it for about 3 years at that point. I did it, by the book, so to speak, um, or what I thought was by the book. And I was off of it for 6 months.
Mhm.
And then around the 6 month mark, I went through some stress in my life with another big move and some financial strain. And um, I started to have intrusive, not,
Mhm.
I wouldn't call them suicidal thoughts, but intrusive fears of killing myself.
Mhm.
So I was like, what if I do it? What if I do it? What if, like in a paranoid way, not planning it or anything.
Yeah.
Um, and that, as a mom with a 5-year-old, was he, no, maybe 7 at that point. There's nothing more painful than being in that kind of state and wanting all the world just to be there and present with your child and feeling like you're betraying them because of what's going on internally. It's just awful. And so I went back on it pretty quickly, tried again to taper, doing the reductions they tell you. maybe 6 months later, after I'd kind of stabilized and again was having that. And uh, I was like, you know what? Maybe I have to be on it for the rest of my life. It doesn't matter if I can be there for my son. Like, if I can make that world stop and just be here for my son, I don't care if it takes drugs. I don't care if I'm a zombie, as long as I'm here for him, you know? Because you can't be, I mean, maybe it takes like a sage or something to be present when you're having intrusive thoughts like that. Like, it's very, very painful. Um, and so I was kind of, I hadn't quite resigned, obviously, to maybe being on it for the rest of my life. Um, but I did find, I'm really stable now. I'm in a relationship where, we're great. We're just everything. I was like, you'll never be more stable than this. It's not possible. So that now's the time. And so I was at 100. I went down to 75. It was a little bumpy, but it wasn't, nothing I couldn't handle. So I was like, all right, let's do the next one. So I cut the next pill in half or whatever. And then it got a little weird, a little scary. And then the fear is also, well, once I've had the worst, worst, worst experience, the fear is always of it coming back, right? So it makes it harder because ignorance is bliss, right? In that situation. Like if you can imagine it, you can sort of almost manifest it. I mean, I don't exactly believe that, but um, by fearing it, right? You can bring it on. So around that time, my boyfriend was like, you have to listen to this podcast. And that was when I found Laura. And I immediately, the name of Inner Compass just spoke to me because that was the thing that had guided me all those years, not to go and give up my agency to, someone in a psych ward or whatever. Um, and so I was like, she gets it. Like that just that word choice, she gets it. It's ultimately the inner compass that's guiding all of us. And the thing that told me like, yeah, I will accept having to be on meds, but I'm gonna fight every way I can before I'm gonna exhaust all the possibilities before I resign to that. Um, and so like I said, I'm now at 62.5. Things are great, life's great. My next taper is gonna be, zero point 0.9, like 0.9% of whatever, and it's liquid, and I can do that. And I feel like I have agency now to take baby steps, and maybe it'll take me 10 years, who knows? But that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. And it's actually really interesting. It's like when we talk about self-agency or taking back reverence or your inner compass, it's like if you go all the way back to the beginning of your story, when you first went on, you mentioned I shouldn't, like I had that moment where I was like, I shouldn't be on these meds. That was your intuition, right? That was your spirit, your soul, that there was communication. And it's like we're taught as society to silence that, right? In so many ways. So it's like even if we have that moment, and all of us do, I also had that moment many times, but I kept handing reverence back to the man in the white coat because that's what I was taught, that, societal, like they know they're the educated one. I am not, right? And so I don't have that right to have that agency at that point. And that kind of like to your point, this whole journey brings you right back ultimately to you finding your true self, right? And listening to that inner voice ultimately.
exactly, because I think the extremes give us a way better
Yeah.
limit of who we really are. Like if I could just
Yeah.
be comfortable, I mean, we violate ourselves a million times a day, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna, eat this when I don't really want to, or I'm gonna watch this, or I'm gonna date this person, or, and we kind of betray ourselves.
That's right.
And I think in this life, my inner voice had to put me in situations where I needed to hear it screaming at me, to really learn how to listen.
I think that's called human, right? Like here, we just, the veil is so thick. We just like, I think that's a real major purpose of life, right? Of evolution is like, how do we really evolve without great suffering? And this is obviously a very unique level of suffering because there are not many conditions that take away mind, body, and spirit, right? This all psych
Yeah.
drug harm alters consciousness. Like there's endless literature on this of like actual like how it how it affects the brainstem like cortical atrophy like this alters consciousness and so like it's like I don't know a greater harm and a greater teacher I just don't know what that could
Exactly.
look like.
Yes, everything you just said. And I think that's why this is such important work because there's no other, medicine or intervention in the Western paradigm that impacts people on such a deeply intimate, deeply, I mean, I would say sacred
Yeah,
level.
totally 100%.
It's interference with your most fundamental way of seeing yourself and way of seeing the world and perceiving the world. And it is something that should be undertaken with the utmost reverence,
That's right.
utmost care, caution, and deference to the person who is having that done to them or experiencing that. Because ultimately, what is the goal of psychology and psychiatry if not to give voice to that inner compass? What else could it possibly be for except control? I mean, that's the dark shadow side of it,
That's
right?
it. That's right. That's
The
right.
light side is we want to empower that inner voice in everyone. Like imagine a world like that, right? So to me, that is the conversation. That's really the essence of this whole movement of the reason I'm involved in it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it ultimately everything goes back to the shadow. Like when you like even looking at, the way doctors prescribe, it's like how often do they just prescribe because in fact they are not able to handle others' emotions and because they can't handle their emotions. And so the easy thing to do is prescribe because
Yeah.
that's how their nervous system is engineered, right? And they have
Right.
this, you have the hero complex that they have. I need to save you, and this is what I'm going to do to save. It's like if we go back to the shadow. I mean, imagine if doctors actually most of these doctors are not healers. They're the exact opposite of healers. They're so busy trying to numb a signal, which is the body's brilliant ability to communicate, hey, I have something to tell you. Hey, I'm angry. I'm bitter. I'm sad, anxious, depressed. These are brilliant, brilliant human signals that are meant to be heard. But we go to a doctor that knows nothing more than numbing. And so it's like it it ultimately goes all the way back to what you were saying, right? Like it's such like because of their own shadows and right, it's our own shadows that led us to the doctor and right we have just as much accountability in many ways, right? And that's a part of the journey, right? Like as you walk through this, those fragments start to expose itself and you either do the work or, I think no matter what, if someone does the work or not, there's no way to come out of this not evolved in some form, right? Like if you stay with a pulse somehow, you're going to come out with some level of evolution through it.
Completely. And what you just said is the reason that I never could fully trust
Mm.
a psychiatrist or a doctor. Like I obviously went and I got the drugs, but it was for my own, devices. It wasn't because they told me or they, imposed it on me. And I was so afraid when I was at my worst of actually going to a psych ward or talking to someone about what I was experiencing because that paradigm cuts off at the knees anything beyond the biological. So how could I go and have my spiritual self, my heart-centered self completely denied and give my agency to them? Like that to me, that's a different kind of a suicide.
Oh, totally. It's assault.
It is. I truly think that the forcible medication of any person, it's akin to an existential rape in my mind.
I Girl, I was literally gonna say the same thing after I consider it. And like, I know many, right? Many of us have been, molested or raped, whatever our journey is. The amount of women that I have met that have been protracted and injured go on to say, I'd rather have been raped over and over again than experience this. I cannot tell you the amount of women. I mean, I know what I experienced. I would rather have my leg amputated and gone to jail for 30 years. Like, give me terminal cancer any day than the journey I've walked. And I'm still walking. It's like, and I say that I will repeat that all the way to the end. Like I would take an amputated leg any day over this path. And so yes, I would agree. I think it's ultimately it is a form of rape to say the least. They take away
Yeah.
our body. They take away our body.
Yeah, and it's beyond it because, the pain of the body doesn't mess with your fundamental way of perceiving yourself in the world, you know? So any physical pain seems tolerable compared to the psychological pain of completely being shattered. It's difficult to put words to how shattering it is, not only to yourself, but to where even am I? Like, is this heaven or hell? It's like,
Ah.
it's difficult to describe. I don't really know how to put it any other way.
It really is an altered dimension. Like if
Yeah.
anyone has ever experienced, so I was suggested by my doctor to do ketamine, which was because I was misdiagnosed with, anyway, because of the psych drug harm, they're like, let's do ketamine. So I know very well what it's like to trip balls and horrible tripping. I'm ready to jump, wrap the wire around my neck in this room doing this. And like I would take that, like it's like I would take that bad trip any day over this trip, but it's like it really is you're it's an altered dimension. It's an altered consciousness. Like we're
Yes.
not on this earth with all of these normies that are walking. We are not a part of
No,
this community. We are at a different dimension, unfortunately, you know?
that's the best way to put it. I felt like I was a ghost. I
Yeah,
was I'm not human. I'm pretending to be
that's right.
human, like going through my emotions. They're gonna find me out. Like there's this paranoia. They're gonna find out. They're gonna see that I'm this alien, you know? And it's like what you said. It's like a trip is one thing because you know it's gonna end. Like even a bad trip, you know it's gonna end.
That's
But
right.
when it's just life, that's
That's right.
intolerable.
That's right. And it's interesting with your journey, like y- you're someone that carried a lot of responsibility. Like you were responsible. You like there was hard work, right? You're a hard worker. You were willing to put in the work. And it's like you just needed correct guidance. Like
Exactly.
that's what you needed as like a young woman that was trying to find her way. And it's unfortunate, like our parents didn't know how to help us in many ways. Like I think they just wanted us to be happy some way, somehow. And so they probably like I think I grew up similar to you. Like I grew up in a natural path, homeopathic. Nobody was on psych drugs. No one understood any of these drugs. So when the situation happened, they were just like, okay, you just need to do whatever is going to heal you. Because, this, why would a doctor prescribe a drug that could destroy your life? Like, that's never a thought, right? And so, um, I feel sorry for the little girl that like you were so willing to do the right thing. You really tried. I mean, obviously again, this has been your greatest teacher, but I feel sorry for that little girl because all she wanted to do was like the right thing, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because like I think all she really wanted was, I wanted my parents to
Hmm.
say, "Hey, what's going on? Like, how can we help you? Like, that's really all I wanted." And
Yeah.
it spiraled, into this thing of, um, trying to figure out how to get my needs met, and at the same time, I don't regret it. I mean, there was years and years. Why did I beating myself up, If I had never if that 15-year-old girl, whatever, had never done that, But I feel at this point, I wouldn't have come even going back on it in 2017 when I thought I'd failed. I thought, oh, yep, you failed. You were so close to being okay. And then, you went and moved across the continents and I even now looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't have found this community. I wouldn't have finally understood what protracted withdrawal was. Being
Mhm.
able to put that name to it has been so powerful for me.
That's right.
And maybe I don't know yet, but maybe some work can come of it. Maybe some kind of service can come of it that I can, be of benefit as a result.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I am curious, so you're doing this hyperbolic taper now. Like so how does that feel for you? Like what do you deal with a lot of symptoms? Like what does this feel like for you now?
Right now, I'm totally fine. I've been holding it 62.5 for quite a while, probably like maybe 6 months. So, like I said, when I went from 100 to 75, that was like
Yeah.
bumpy, but it was mostly physical. Like I had some tremors, like kind of twitchy, and had some insomnia, but it didn't really affect my outlook too much. And then when I quickly after that, I was like, okay, that was fine. I think I'm out of the worst of it. I went to 62.5 with the pills still, like cutting the pills, and that got a little dicey. Like
Mm.
I was kind of like really angry and impatient with my family. I was starting to have like negative thoughts about myself. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just ride this one out. I'm not gonna make any changes quite yet. And then I discovered hyperbolic tapering. So now I know I don't have to do such a big jump every time. I can just go baby steps. But like I said, I've been holding and I feel great. Like I had, a family member come and interestingly, he was, he had some health issues. He came to stay and that was stressful just having a family member come. Basically my future father-in-law. But then he went through benzo withdrawals when he was here because his doctors wouldn't prescribe his benzos over state lines, which I thought was completely insane and irresponsible. Like it's a liability thing for them.
Yeah, it
So
is. Yeah.
they could have killed him. But
100%.
you know, he's done it before, he said. He's a hardy person apparently, because I don't think I could have survived that, but that's another aside. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to keep tapering while this is happening. But he's home now and he's doing well and he's not on his benzos, so like yay for him. I mean,
Oh,
that's
wow, so he
amazing.
survived. So he went cold turkey and then he came out on the other side. Well, one in five people, like one in five do like I'm not one in five, 5 out of 6, that does happen, right? Like that's a real thing. Like it's like death and then they come out of it. And then there's the other group of us that doesn't come out of it, for
Right.
it's a very different journey.
Yeah, it was so
Wow.
triggering for me because I'm like, oh my God, you can't do this. Like, duh. And then
Yeah, you must.
my doctor was like, his experience might not be the same as yours. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. So,
So wild. Like antidepressants doctors can prescribe over the border, but they can't do that with benzos. But they
right.
prescribe it like it's candy, but they fail to tell you that like you would think you should tell a patient like the severity of why don't you explain why you can't prescribe it over the line? Like why don't you tell
Right.
that? Let's see if the patient's going to make that same decision accepting it at the end, you know?
Yeah. And then the onus was on him, like, oh, sorry, I'll give you one more week. And then you got to find a new doctor. It's like, okay, well, all the doctors are scheduled 6 months out. We go to urgent care. They can only give in 3 days worth. It's like, he's just SOL, you know?
And it's
Like,
so crazy because it's like the so many doctors won't prescribe it anymore. But it's like they don't prescribe it for actually the wrong reasons. Like, oh, it's addictive. It's like no, because it's physical dependent. So now that patient that was on it and now begging to go on it, you're gonna kill them. Like they have a like there's a like there is a shot. There is a definite percentage that they have a chance of killing them right now. Like and it's mind blowing. It's just mind blowing. But I know
yeah,
that's a different conversation, I guess.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could talk about a lot
Yeah.
of like, oh God, it was crazy. I mean, it was very triggering, but he's fine. And I learned like, yeah, okay, not everybody's experience it. I have the nervous system that I have.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, much of my life, I saw that as a liability. I thought I had some weird weakness. Like I don't think I'm a strong person. I mean, I don't think I'm a weak person, but I thought something was flawed about me, but I just have the nervous system that I have.
That's
And
right.
I've really learned to accept that.
I am curious because it sounds like you have a level of not everyone understands that this is a nervous system injury, right? They like I think that a lot of people don't like they'll say it, but they don't really understand what that means, right? And so I'm curious for you, it's like because it seems like there is a level of understanding that the association of like, okay, this is the nervous system, how that functions, how do I baby that, right? So I'm curious of like, and you mentioned it a little earlier, like what are the tools that you do to soothe your nervous system? I would love to know.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I've spent the last 16 years like becoming an amateur expert at my own nervous system because of necessity. But even before everything happened, I was really into yoga and meditation. Um, and I have to say that despite being really into yoga and meditation, that they do nothing for me when I'm truly dysregulated. Like
Yep.
it was just another way for me to beat myself up. Like, why can't you just relax? Why can't you just be present? Why can't, you know?
Yep.
And what really helps me, like truly when I'm in just distress in acute like nervous system dysregulation is being around other people who have regulated nervous systems. That's a huge one. So that's called co-regulation. Um, Sleep. And I will say like there were times when I did have to take benzos to be able to sleep. I never took benzos regularly, so it was not a risk for me per se, but there were times when I was so desperate to sleep
Yep.
that um yeah, I was afraid. I was like, oh, now I'm on another drug and but I had to do it and it was worth it. Like I spaced it out like I do it once a month just to make sure I got one solid night of sleep because I was having such bad insomnia. And to me, sleep is like a lifesaver. Like if I can just get a night's sleep, then I can handle whatever the next day has to give me, you know? And on top of that, I've also tried like every other thing you could do for sleep. So yoga nidra,
Mhm.
again, like in acute dysregulation, probably not. But in medium dysregulation, it does help me a lot. Valerian root, medium dysregulation can be helpful. Um, and that's another nuance, is sometimes the big guns are the only option, See, because you're that far, on the other end of the spectrum, right? So I think I think a big part of the learning for me has been to see when is something medicine and when is it a poison. And that the answer is never the same for two different people or even maybe the same person at a different time. And that's something that I think is really important for the community and for the medical establishment to understand is, you know, it's all about what that person needs in this moment, what kind of nervous system you're working with, um, and all those other factors that are undefinable.
That's right. And it's interesting. It's like doctors don't understand. I mean, if you talk about the nervous system, I think they just see strings inside the body and that's it. Like,
Yeah,
it's like you do know that everything you are is a byproduct of the nerve. Like the way you think that, like, the way you have been wired, every decision you have made in your life, like that is what a personality is. Like when we really think about it, like what is a personality? A personality is no more than your upbringing, trauma in your environment, right? And which has all been wired through your nervous system. We are all walking nervous system. And of course, there's spirit and right? Like there's the soul aspect, right? So there's these two facets that really come together in this physical form, but it's like right out the window. So to your point, it's like that's the probably the most important conversation because I really do believe that like why many of us why is it 1 in 6 on benzos and 1 in 10 on antidepressants get injured, right? And I think it ultimately goes back to a dysregulated nervous system before we entered on these drugs. Like,
right.
or if you even had an injury or an
Yeah.
like Lyme disease or something like that, that again goes back to dysregulating a nervous system. And then when you put in neurotoxins, right, if you have a dysregulated nervous system, you're not metabolizing a drug normally anyway. That alone, right? Just single-handedly right there, you're not going to metabolize a drug correctly. And then you're more likely to build up the toxins in the body. So it's like, how is the nervous system not the first step or even a pharmacological test? Like the bare minimum, do a pharmacological test just to see what they're able to digest versus not. But yeah, I think to your point, that should be like first entry point when anyone's ever being considered for a drug.
Yeah, for really for any illness, like what's your nervous system doing? How is that interacting with this? You know, it's a whole system, right? Um, and also to that point, I think dance has been a really great regulator for me,
Yeah.
even in the most acute spaces, because when you're like your insides are just trying to, or you know, metaphorically, they're putting you through hell, right? What could be more life affirming than dancing through it, you know? And I found that really, really helpful. Um, Strength training for acute and everything, strength, just heavy, slow, heavy weights, like super grounding, not like intense, like, you know, huff and puff, like
Yeah.
that's really helped me. Um, and I'm sure I'll think of like 10 more things when we finish our
Curious,
conversation.
did like cold showers or ice cubes in the hands, like did that help? We see that often helping with akathisia, so that's why I'm asking you.
I don't remember ever really trying that. I will say like I have a little bit of a background in Ayurveda through yoga, which is it's like a traditional Indian medicine, and their instruction for the nervous system is to really stay away from cold. And
Mm.
so that's something that I've always kind of followed, but also found to be true for me. Like I do not do well with cold. And so I would have to like to try cold plunging, for instance. I'm very curious about it, but I would have to be in a very regulated state to want to give it a try, to know that I could afford the cost of potentially dysregulating myself.
It's really interesting, and I love that you brought this up because it's like it is something that is very effective for a lot of us, right? But why is it effective? Is it effective because it actually regulates the nervous system, or does it shock the nervous system that it starts to release chemicals thinking it's dying? Now you need to focus, right? And that's actually like when you look at there's something called the dive reflex. I think out of Sweden, there was these scientists that did a lot of research on it. And the idea is like a lot of there are mammals that like just dive into the water and like that process of diving in kind of puts the body into this fight or flight. And then when you're in that fight or flight, you're now focused. Right? It takes you into that focus mode. Hence why it could kind of like take you out of akathisia a bit or out of panic, right? Because it's definitely a very common method we use, right? And so, I mean, that was something that had helped me, but I was curious, and it's a good point to make.
Yeah, I think it might be just such a pattern interrupt
Yeah,
to the
that's right.
body that it's like, whoa, what's going on? What was I doing? You know, something like that. And like I said, I'd be very curious to try it. But a lot of the periods of time when I was in protracted withdrawal and even, you know, in just life being dysregulated, I felt really bottomed out. Like I wasn't resourced enough to do something that would be that demanding on my body,
Yeah,
if that
no,
makes
yeah, totally, totally. So I know we're coming up at time here. I'd love to ask maybe one more question here. Like, um, what has been the greatest gifts that have come out of your journey so far?
great question. Um, the greatest gift is, like I said before, being able to hear that inner voice
Mhm.
louder, being able to identify it over the noise, over the insecurities, the outside influences, you know, that internal locus of control, that internal guide. And I'm not perfect at it by any means, like I'm still on that journey. Um, but I've come so far into feeling self-possessed. And that was the thing that meds briefly took away for a while, was completely not in possession of myself, completely not in possession of agency. And through a very hard one journey, I've come to have more self-possession than I ever did before. And of course, in a more, you know, tangible sense, my son has been an incredible gift, who, you know, he, not just him as a person and that relationship, but he taught me how we heal together. And so much of my inner story was like, I've got to do this myself. I've got to figure it out myself. I've got to push through this and whatever. Um, and he has helped me to soften and to open to the love and the benefits and the gifts of other people.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like in this journey we lose like our mind and body, right? And in many ways we lose spirit. Like we lose spirit in this as well, but um because we lose so much of that, we start to look for some voice inside because that's the voice that we start to hold on to, right? Like, why is many of us still here, right, to tell the story or still going? Because some part of us is whispering, you will get through this, right? And that's your intuition. Because it is such a horrific journey. I think without that string, it would make it very challenging to walk this path, to be honest. And I think we
It'd be
all know.
impossible. It'd be impossible.
I would agree. And so it's like, what I have found, and I think this is also your case, and you tell me, it's like as you heal and as you go through this journey, that voice only becomes stronger, like, and it becomes louder. And then at some point, if like I'm at a point where that's only thing I hear now at this point, because this has gone, this has been so damaged. And so I can't listen to that. That's not making the right decision. So it's like, it's just interesting how I think as we heal, that's the greatest gift that we walk away with, to your point, and it becomes so loud, and as we heal it becomes actually so much louder.
Exactly. Yeah, if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, I might have lived a comfortable life. I might have lived a successful life. Whatever adjective you want to put, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't have the humility and I wouldn't know truth from false. I wouldn't have the ability to discern, you
yeah,
know, and I wouldn't recognize that voice when it called out.
totally. Well, Crystal, I know we're at time. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us and just being so vulnerable with us today. I really appreciate that. I'm sure the listeners are going to be really appreciate that. And I guess the last thing would just be, do you want to share where like any of the listeners could find you? And I could also put in the description like any of your socials. But yeah, if you want to share where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah, I started an Instagram just specifically for this world, this part of my life, and it's mindful.unwind.
Yeah, great. And I'm going to put it in the description so the folks can find you and follow you there. But again, Crystal, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.